Welcome to the annual Public Health Department's Privacy and Security Training. The objectives of this training are to provide an update, to receive information on recent HIPAA and security issues and the corrective actions taken to address these issues within the Public Health Department, to explain the role of the PhD's business associates in protecting patient privacy, to increase your awareness around cybersecurity, and to give guidance on identifying how to report compliance, privacy, or security issues. At the very end, you'll be asked to complete an online quiz to verify your completion of this training. Hyperlinks to more information will be available throughout the slideshow. These are optional and for your reference only. A quick note, some slides will have audio narration to accompany the slides. Click on the microphone on either the bottom left or right corners of the slides to hear more. If you do not have audio capabilities, the script for the narrations will be available in the Notes section. To view the notes, locate the bottom toolbar and click Notes. As mentioned in the previous slide, you will be required to take a brief quiz at the end of this training to receive credit. Throughout this training, the HIPAA Hippo will be highlighting key important points. Pay special attention to these as they may pop up on the quiz. This is the contact information for the PhD's compliance team. You may want to print this slide for future reference. To report a breach anonymously, use the toll-free compliance reporting phone at 844-351-0659 or the confidential county whistleblower hotline at 844-413-4025. You may contact any of the other team members, but keep in mind it will not be anonymous. We will discuss how to identify a breach and what to do later on in this training. The privacy and security policies at the PhD are mandated by two different rules, which come from the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, better known as HIPAA. The HIPAA privacy rules set standards for protecting all types of individually identifiable health information, including hard copy, whereas the HIPAA security rule extends protection to electronic personal health information, or EPHI. As a covered entity, both rules apply to the PhD as a whole. This is why every PhD staff member is required to take this training, regardless of whether or not you work with patients directly. The Information Practices Act of 1977 accompanies the HIPAA privacy and security rules, meaning that if there is a breach of PHI or EPHI, the PhD is required to document and disclose what has occurred. The PhD is also required to provide a security breach notification to impacted residents of California. Next, we will be discussing what PHI and EPHI is and how you can prevent a breach from occurring. Protected health information, or PHI, can be in either hard copy or electronic form and includes sensitive personal health information. Similarly, PII is personally identifiable information that is a person's first name or initial plus their last name and additional identifiers. PII becomes PHI when it is combined with health information. Protecting PHI and PII helps prevent identity theft as breaches can contain social security numbers, patient names, and other personal information. A formal breach assessment process is required by law and will be described in greater detail throughout this presentation. We will talk more about breaches later in this training. The next couple of slides will give examples of both PHI and PII. PHI consists of any information from a medical record and any of these individual identifiers. Take a minute to review. Which were the most surprising to you? PII is personally identifiable information that is not necessarily health-related. PII does become PHI when it is combined with health information. Please review these potential identifiers. Accessing the minimum necessary is critical to protecting PHI and PII. The minimum necessary means that you are only looking at records or information related to the direct tasks assigned to you. For example, if a family member comes into the clinic for care and they aren't assigned to you, then you should not look up their records. If you do, this is considered a breach and will need to be reported. Frequent auditing and monitoring of EPIC, the PhD's electronic health record system, also occurs and can identify any improper access to health records. Protecting PHI and PII is a collective effort. Please review these steps you can take to protect the privacy of our patients and clients at the PhD. Feel free to print this out for future reference. There are many different forms of PHI that can pose a risk for a breach. Electronic devices that contain ePHI and allow access to the internet can potentially be hacked and the information stolen. We will discuss cybersecurity in a later slide. Additionally, leaving paperwork with PHI out in unsecure areas or at an unmonitored workstation put hard copy PHI at risk. Can you think of any other risks? Congrats, you're a third of the way done. Let's review what you've learned so far. 1. The HIPAA privacy rule and security rule protect patients' medical records and personal health information. The PhD is a covered entity, so the rules apply to the whole department. 2. The PhD is required to disclose any breach of computerized data that includes personal information and provide a security breach notification to impacted residents. 3. PHI is individually identifiable health information transmitted or maintained by a covered entity or its business associates in any form or medium, i.e., birth date on an intake form. 4. PII is an individual's unencrypted first name or first initial and last name in combination with certain identifiers, i.e., J. Smith plus their driver's license number. 5. There are many ways PHI and PII can be compromised. Keep PHI and PII safe at all times. You can find many of the privacy and security policies on the public health intranet. Navigate to the intranet homepage, select Search All Resources under the Resources tab, and then search by keywords or numbers. Take the time now to test this out using the Notice of Privacy Practices above. This is a notice that lets our patients know how we safeguard their PHI and is required by law. A breach is the release of PHI and PII without authorization from the patient. Timely reporting of a breach is required. If a breach does occur, there are a couple of ways to report it. You can report a breach directly to your supervisor, who will then report it to the compliance team. You can also report a breach or other privacy and security concerns directly to the compliance team. If you want to report anonymously, call the toll-free compliance reporting number or the whistleblower hotline. These numbers and contact information are on slide 4 of this presentation. Remember, you cannot be retaliated against for reporting. Once a breach is reported, an investigation will be launched. PhD's compliance program ensures that a suspected breach is investigated and assessed to determine what has occurred. The PhD privacy and security officials work with the compliance officer to investigate and make these assessments. Depending on those results, the PhD may offer free credit monitoring to the affected patient or patients. While breaches are serious and something to be avoided, they also create opportunities for the PhD to strengthen their policies and practices. This is why this annual training is required to update on new privacy and security information. We must all work together to ensure HIPAA compliance. Every one of us has a role in reporting and preventing violations. Throughout this presentation, you will see different examples of threats to privacy and security to help you identify breaches. Please read through these as they reflect real-life scenarios that have occurred over the years and could occur during your time at the PhD. On this slide, we are reviewing breach examples related to the minimum necessary. If you need more information, please refer back to slide 10. How do we know if our safeguarding has been effective and no breaches have occurred? To verify this, we must monitor and audit our processes. Monitoring is the ongoing day-to-day review of operational data and access to PHI. Auditing is a snapshot in time of the safeguarding of PHI. As mentioned earlier, audits and frequent monitoring occur as part of the HIPAA security rule requirements. These audits show what has been accessed in the EHR system and who accessed it. The PhD's EHR system recognizes every keystroke which can be recalled later for an audit or investigation. If an audit finds inappropriate access, that information will be forwarded to the Privacy and Security Officer for investigation. You can be held responsible for any access outside of your assigned tasks. In the next 2 slides, we'll be reviewing potential legal consequences of accessing more than the minimum necessary. There are 3 different tiers of civil penalties when someone fails to comply with HIPAA. 1. When a covered entity or associate does not know a violation occurs. 2. When a covered entity or associate caused a violation with reasonable cause. 3. When a covered entity or associate caused a violation consciously and intentionally. Fines for these tiers range from $100 to $1.5 million. Additionally, the Information Practices Act of 1977 from Slide 6 requires that discipline be taken for intentional violations, the 3rd tier. Criminal penalties apply when a person knowingly uses or causes the use of PHI or PII, obtains PHI or PII related to a patient, or discloses PHI or PII to another person. Penalties can be as severe as fines up to $250,000 and/or imprisonment for up to 10 years. The Information Practices Act of 1977 also has criminal penalties. When someone willfully requests and obtains PHI or PII under false pretenses and/or intentionally discloses PHI or PII, penalties can be as severe as fines up to $50,000 and/or imprisonment and/or be guilty of a misdemeanor. Halfway there. Key takeaways from this section of the training include: 1. The Notice of Privacy Practices lets patients know what the PhD does to safeguard their PHI and PII. It is a required notice. 2. A breach occurs when PHI or PII is released without patient consent. Report breaches immediately. Supervisors are required to report. 3. Audits and monitoring are done regularly, and any inappropriate access of PHI or PII will be investigated. 4. Civil penalties result in fines and discipline up to termination depending on the circumstances. 5. Criminal penalties result in fines and possible imprisonment depending on the circumstances. In the next section, we will review how to safeguard PHI and PII, as well as see examples of different scenarios you may encounter as a staff member of the PhD. Cybersecurity is defined as the practice of deploying people, policies, processes, and technologies to protect organizations, their critical systems, and sensitive information from digital attacks. With much of our work and records at the PhD being on computers, patient data is at risk to cybercriminals and cyber attacks. Medical records are of high value on the dark web and black market, creating even more risk. Be mindful of anyone asking for confidential information, especially relating to patient records. On the next slide, we talk about signs of cyber threats and how you can help protect patient data. It takes a team to protect our patients' information and privacy. The PhD has the responsibility to provide a variety of tools to keep cybercriminals out of our systems, including keeping our computer systems patched and updated, logging all activity to identify threats, and training to staff to help recognize potential problems. The County of Santa Barbara provides firewalls, antivirus, and other security methods to help keep cybercriminals out of our networks. Review the signs of fraudulent activity on the right of the slide so that you know how to recognize a potential threat. You can also assist in upholding PhD cybersecurity systems by completing the annual cybersecurity training, reporting suspicious activity immediately, running system updates in a timely manner, and reporting if your computer is acting strange. Do not comply with any requests for PHI or PII until you have verified the source is legitimate. When in doubt, ask your supervisor or a member of the compliance team for assistance. Having strong passwords and security questions is important for protecting data from cyber attacks. Check out our suggestions above and try implementing these the next time you create a new password or when you're required to update your password. In the following slides, we will be going over an in-depth review of some individual risks to PHI and PII. Please reference slide 12 for the full list. First up, emails. Emails can be a large threat to cybersecurity and patient data. Cybercriminals will participate in phishing, which is sending emails that look legitimate but link to websites or attachments that have viruses embedded in them. Scrutinize all emails from strangers and never click on a hyperlink or attachment. One tip is to hover over the link to see if it goes to a legitimate website. Sometimes a seemingly legitimate link will be hyperlinked with a fake one to trick you into clicking on it. When in doubt, check with IT about the authenticity of an email. Email with PHI that is not sent via secure email continues to be a problem and results in a breach. If you are sending PHI outside the Santa Barbara County's Outlook email system, even to another healthcare provider, you must use secure email. Just prepare the email as you would normally in Outlook, but in the subject line, type secure in brackets, not leaving any spaces. That's all you have to do to avoid a problem. A secure email template is available with instructions in the PhD intranet under Staff Stuff. Please follow the steps outlined there to create an easy one-click template which will ensure a breach does not occur. If you have accidentally sent an unencrypted email without this protection, please contact the privacy or security officers for instruction. Remember, do not ever include PHI in the subject line of any email as that is not encrypted. PHI should be placed in the body of the encrypted email, which is secure. Do not send PHI unless you use secure email. Next, we'll discuss faxes. Though faxes have become less common, they still pose a threat to PHI and PII. Check fax numbers to ensure they are coming from a legitimate source. Google if necessary. You can also check your patient's medical record for a preferred pharmacy if there is a request from a suspicious one. If you aren't expecting a request, or if there are other red flags about a fax, check with the compliance team to verify. If taking photos while at work, ensure that they do not include PHI or PII in them before posting them on social media. Pictures with people in them need a consent form signed and documented before being posted online. For additional policy guidance, review the Use of Social Networking Technology policy on the PhD intranet, and if you still have further questions, contact the Public Information Officer. Recently, the county switched from using Skype to Microsoft Teams. In Teams, chats do not delete once the window is closed out and are stored in Teams for 30 days unless both parties delete them manually. The SBC Executive IT Council, or EITC, has adopted a policy to delete team chat after 30 days. If you have access to Epic, use the chat feature there to exchange confidential information instead. Remember, always keep information and identifiers to the minimum necessary. Never throw away documents containing PHI or PII into regular trash cans. These should be discarded in designated locked bins for shredding, or you can manually shred them yourself with a cross-cut paper shredder. While using open, marked containers temporarily in secure areas is acceptable for the workday, this is not preferred. Secure areas include those that are inaccessible without a key, fob, or badge. A dual relationship is one where a PhD employee's family or friend is a patient at the clinic, or when an employee was formerly a patient at the clinic. Report any dual relationship you may have to a supervisor immediately. A break the glass prompt will be placed on patient records that are involved with a dual relationship, requiring identification to access and a reason for accessing. This safeguards patients and employees. Again, remember to never access a family or friend's medical records out of curiosity or concern if it is outside of your assigned tasks. There has been an increase in car break-ins and property theft. While not usually the initial target of a break-in, PHI and PII can become collateral damage. Do not ever leave county property, especially laptop, cell phone, or documents containing PHI or PII, in your vehicle. Take it with you when you leave the vehicle. Please report any thefts or losses immediately. Finally, let's discuss workstations. Always lock before you walk to prevent unauthorized use of your credentials. This means that when you leave your workstation to walk down the hall to throw out documents with PHI into secure shred bins or for some other reason, you press the Windows key and the L key at the same time to lock your computer. This does not shut the computer off, but will require a password to get back in. Try this now. For an added layer of security in areas open to the public, you can request a privacy screen for your computer monitor. When leaving your workstation briefly in a shared office and there is hard copy PHI, turn it over or place in a folder. PHI should be locked in a file cabinet at the end of the day. If you work in an area open to the public, lock up hard copy PHI if you step away. These things will prevent unauthorized people from reading information that they are not authorized to read or that may go beyond their minimum necessary scope of work. You did it! Here are the final takeaways from this section. 1. Be aware and always validate the identity of someone requesting confidential information. 2. Never share your passwords. Create better, secure passwords with a mix of letters, numbers, and symbols. 3. Report dual relationships as soon as you become aware of them. Report thefts and losses of county or PhD property when they occur. 4. Always lock your computer and secure your workstation before leaving. Try holding the Windows key and the L key at the same time. 5. When in doubt, reach out. If you're uncertain, you can always ask before sharing PHI and PII with someone. Thank you for attending this year's Privacy and Security Training. If you have any questions, please contact the compliance team. All of the references used in this training are on the next slide. The last slide has instructions for how to take the mandatory quiz.